This week is a powerful week because the energy available is very practical and very relatable to, I think, all of our lives, irrespective of what we're individually dealing with, whether it's challenges with family, relationships, health, business. The energy is also one defined by separation at the outset, but then the potentiality of what can be accomplished by virtue of that separation. And I'll explain. But by and large, this week, what we can expect to see come up energetically and practically is disagreement with other people, is confrontation arising in heated matters, sometimes matters where we might expect confrontation, other times may come out of the blue this week. But it's really a week defined by some sort of separation, right? Disagreement, confrontation, separation. Now the question is, amidst a seemingly heavy energy like that, what's our work? What's the potential? And we'll talk through it further. But as we come to know Kabbalistically, in the midst of an illusionary physical construct of separation or disagreement, confrontation, there must be the potential for harmony and for unity and for oneness, seemingly the opposite of the objectively negative interpersonal dynamic, right? And so what's the story behind this? Let's start there. So this portion, it's called Korach. It's the name of an individual. And effectively, this individual was around at the time of Moses, and so was among the Israelites, but he was a leader in his own right. Excuse me. He established leadership over a specific tribe or sect of the Israelites. And frankly, in addition to him following Moses, the guy had a lot of his own followers, hundreds, several hundreds, they say about 250. At one point, he had come to this conclusion that he was meant to be what was called the high priest of the land at that time among the Israelites. At the time, Moses' brother Aaron held that title of the high priest. And Korach had come to this decision that based on his meditation and his thoughts, he thought that that priesthood, that high priesthood, was a position destined for him. So he musters up the courage at one point and approaches Moses and says to him, listen, Moses, I've been thinking about it, prayed on it, meditated on it. I believe that the high priest should not be your brother Aaron, it should be me. That's the conclusion that I've come to, and I want to express that to you. Moses, being what we know as the most elevated spiritual person physically that has ever lived, takes what Korach is saying and says, listen, I don't necessarily see it that way. I believe that I've received a message from the Creator that Aaron should be in that position. However, I'm open and moreover, I'd ask that we allow the Creator to show us the truth. If the Creator shows us through some sort of circumstance that you are meant, Korach, to be the high priest, so be it. I'm open to it. But let us be guided. Let us not come to a point where it's my decision versus your decision. Let the Creator speak. And so what happens thereafter? The sign from the Creator comes, and an earthquake rips the ground apart, right where Korach and his 250 disciples are, and they're effectively swallowed up by the land. They're swallowed up by the earth. And he is no more. And the priesthood remains with Aaron. This story, it begs many questions. But the first and probably most obvious question is, when we step into a disagreement or a confrontation, what is our consciousness? And let's look at Korach, let's look at Moses. We know the fate that Korach and his followers suffered. They were effectively removed by the Creator from the physical world. And so what does that signify to us? When he approached Moses, basically stating that he's come to the conclusion that he was destined for the priesthood, we must know that that came from the ego, right? Because otherwise he wouldn't have been swallowed up by the earthquake. So, and this is where it becomes a very, very fine line, which we'll talk about. He comes to Moses from a place of the ego. He comes to Moses from a place of, this is really what I want, right? I want to become the priest. I enjoy leadership. I want more leadership. And this is really what I want, and I'm going to express it. To Moses, I'm going to share the disagreement that I have. I'm going to initiate a confrontation. Now, we see that the net result of initiating a confrontation from a place of ego, right, ends up with no light. In fact, the opposite of light, ends up with physical death in the case of Korach. Let's look at Moses. He's approached with a person in Korach that's confronting him. He has every ability in that moment to go into defensive mode, right? And to say to Korach, when Korach says, I think I should be the high priest, he could say, I'm the person that's leading all of the Israelites. I'm the person in direct contact with the Creator. The Creator has told me that Aaron is meant to be the high priest. It's nice that you came to this conclusion, but you're out of your mind, man. You're out of your mind. But he doesn't do that. What does he do? He says to Korach, he admits in a moment of such elevated humility, says to Korach, based on what I've been shown thus far, I don't think I agree with what you're saying, but I'm completely open. Effectively, I know nothing. The Creator will guide us. Allow the Creator to show us. I know nothing. And this level of humility ends up in a state where Aaron retains the priesthood, and Korach, effectively the initiator of the confrontation, goes away. So on a most basic level, we have to ask ourselves in our lives, what is our consciousness when we're either initiating confrontation like Korach did, or on the receiving end of a disagreement or confrontation like Moses was? What is our consciousness? Do we go straight into defensiveness? Do we go straight into logic and rationality around how we can prove our point? Do we go straight into a very subtle and round the corner sort of manipulation tactic to get the person ultimately to see it the way that we see it? Or do we literally approach that confrontation, that moment when we get hit with either the initiation of it, we initiate, or we receive it? Do we approach that with such significant restriction and a singular desire like Moses did? What is that desire that Moses had? Alignment, to establish truth, to establish unity. Where does truth and unity come from? One place, the light of the Creator. So in that moment, Moses nullifying his own ego and making the decision to say, even though I speak to the Creator directly, I've heard the messages, Aaron is meant to be in that role. This I know, I've been told directly by the Creator. He says in that moment, when Korach approaches, I know nothing and I am open. Only the light knows the truth. And by the way, that the truth may evolve over time, right? So by saying, allow the light to answer the question, to solve the disagreement, this is the consciousness, the energy that we want to be in this week. Because that disagreement, the confrontation is going to come this week specifically, if it hasn't come already. If it hasn't come already. And when it comes, our work in that moment, we have to be excited about it, by the way, when it comes, because this is our opportunity for the week. Our work in that moment is to restrict that innate human desire that we have in us at that second, to start figuring out how we can prove our point, to start figuring out the logic behind our defense, to restrict the desire to be right, to prove our side. That's our work. Create space right there. And then it's to begin to approach the confrontation, the disagreement from a place of alignment, of empathy, of love, and of a state of physical transparency is the best analogy that I could come up with in this moment, where rather than trying to be the one that solves, that digs and applies logic and rationality to solve the disagreement, to create, that we are the creator of an ultimate agreement, which usually means that we're coming from a place of subtle manipulation. We're still trying to fight for our rightness in this situation, still trying to prove our point in some way. We become like a window. We become like glass. We become transparent and allow the light to reveal, allow the space for the light for the light to reveal the truth in the confrontation, the truth in the disagreement. You know, I'm thinking through a negotiation in business, for instance, as an example. And let's say it's a heated negotiation and the sides maybe both are aligned in wanting to get something done, but are significantly further apart than they'd want to be in terms of the terms of the agreement. One side believes wholeheartedly in his set of terms and rationale behind it. The other side believes wholeheartedly in his. So what are we doing practically in that moment? Let's say we're on one side of this disagreement or confrontation. We're wrestling, and our instinct, our ego, is going to fight us very hard in this moment. The negative side, especially when we're trying to establish a rationale for why we're right, the negative side is going to fight us. The mind is going to spin day and night. It could become consuming, right? Around how does this person see it this way? How do they not see it my way? How is there even this far of a gap? What can I say and how can I phrase it to get them to come over to my side? All of that, unfortunately, while it's so instinctual to take that path and become totally consumed in that line of thinking, is missing the point, especially this week. It's not our opportunity to reveal light this week. So practically, what do we do? When our mind wants to go there, when the negative side wants to push us there, our work, first and foremost, is to establish awareness that the negative side is here, the opportunity to restrict in this moment of confrontation is here. And instead of creating all of this thought and trying to solve with our minds, with rationality, this argument, trying to get this person to come closer to my side, we're constantly just pushing it away and saying, I don't know. Light, guide me. Light, guide me in how I can respond. And simultaneously, while we're pushing away the overthinking and this over-reliance on logic and intelligence, which is trying to come in, we're pushing it away. We're also establishing that our objective, in addition to bringing the light in, is to unite, is to reveal love and to reveal truth. These qualities can only come through a transparent ego, because they can only come through the light of the Creator. And to the extent that our ego gets in the way, we're totally adding blemishes and diverting the truth of that message. So our objective is twofold. In the heat of the disagreement or the confrontation, nullify that ego, nullify the instinct to over-rationalize and overthink how to manipulate or how to get them to think like us or how to get them to agree with us. Become that transparent piece of glass, the window, and invite the light to guide us on the next steps, And then when those next steps become clear, become true, become felt, and they will, to the extent that we're pushing away that desire to react, approach the confrontation from a place of love, alignment, and compassion. And by the way, that doesn't mean that we're not to be firm. It doesn't mean that we're not to confront. In fact, Kabbalah speaks quite a bit on the value and benefit of proactive confrontation versus reactive confrontation. Reactive confrontation is just reacting to whatever's coming at us. We get a response from the other side, it gets us heated, we react. What is proactive conversation? Proactive conversation is exactly this process that we're talking about of restricting that desire to react, inviting the light to guide us, and then coming from a true place of alignment and love. And by the way, coming from a true place of alignment and love doesn't necessarily mean, many times it won't, that the other side is going to like what they hear or is going to agree with what they hear. And that's okay. But as long as we're performing the process of allowing the light to guide the response and then ensuring that that response comes from a place of innate truth, love, and compassion, we're revealing the light that we're meant to reveal. We've done our work. Doesn't necessarily mean that this deal gets done. Doesn't necessarily mean that this relationship lasts. Doesn't necessarily mean that anything that we can conceive of with our limited minds in this physical world, that outcome that we want ends up being the outcome. Doesn't mean that at all. But what it does mean is that we have revealed light, and we will become, at some point, the beneficiary of that revelation of light. So Yes, in this week we will experience confrontation. Our goal is to become proactive rather than reactive. We'll experience disagreement. It's a great opportunity for us in our personal lives, in our personal issues. But more globally, the energy of this week on a global scale has tremendous potential to unite, to heal, to bring together. They say that the energy this week, the potential of the energy in this week has the power and the strength to end wars, to end disagreements between countries and tribes and sects. All of that exists for us in this week on a global scale and also on an individual basis to heal intrapersonal wounds or wars or battles that may exist within our lives individually. It's the secret, the Kabbalistic secret to oneness, to healing, and to wholeness, all available energetically in this week. So incredible energy available this week, healing, unifying, and it's an exciting time to be here. It's an exciting time to be alive. Let's embrace it. Let's embrace it this week. And I look forward to seeing you again next week.